Hello, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg. I'm your host, and I am happy that you are here. This Creativity Tuesday episode is going to be a little bit different because yesterday I ran an encore episode of my good friend Petra Mayer's interview on the podcast. I am doing the interview with my other good friend, Valerie Higgs, who is a pianist, a musician, and an administration professional, to talk about how to balance being a business person and being a creative, being a musician and being an admin pro. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. You're going to get a lot out of it. Valerie has a lot to say about what needs to happen for creatives to be comfortable in a business environment, both from within themselves and also so that they are supported by the paradigm in the workplace. What does it mean to be a creative in a professional setting, in a business setting, and how can the business support that creative's success and thriving? And it's an important point, isn't it? Because often businesses are not set up to support creative people or to support the creativity in the people who work there, no matter if they're in creative jobs or not. I hope you'll enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, I interview peak performing innovators in the creative, social impact, and earth conservation spaces who are working to change the world. This episode is brought to you by Brain FM. Brain FM combines the best of music and neuroscience to help you relax, focus, meditate, and even sleep. I love it and have been using it to write, create, and do some of my deepest work. Because you're a listener of the show, you can get a free trial. Head over to brain.fm/innovative mindset to check it out. If you decide to subscribe, you can get 20% off with the coupon code Innovative Mindset, all one word. And now, let's get to the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm Isolde Trachtenberg. I'm your host, and I am thrilled that you're here. And I'm so happy and thrilled that I have this week's guest on the show, and you'll understand why in just a minute. Valerie Higgs is an administrative professional by day and a pianist and music director by night. Currently based in the DC area, she has music director productions at theaters, such theaters like the Ritz Theater Company in South Jersey, the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia, and the Tada Youth Theater Company in New York. Valerie teaches piano online, accompanies for area auditions and competitions, regularly MDs, which means music directs, at Ovations Theater in Rockville, Maryland, and is a member of the DC Tango Orchestra, the Da Capo Tango Quintet, the Tango Reo Ensemble, and she sings with the Philosopher's Tones, which I just love that she had as the last thing because, of course, the Philosopher's Tones is the group that I started back in 2003. And I still lead and manage it, even though I'm in New York and they're in the DC area. But we are one of the premier holiday caroling ensembles in the nation. Valerie, after this long and meandering bio and intro, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
Very
this
excited.
is this is very fun. And it's really fun also because we're kind of used to having these kinds of conversations because of something that isn't in your bio that I'm going to add right now. We are also the duo that forms the Two Women of a Certain Age podcast. And that's another weekly show that we record where we talk about music, movies, theater, uh, women's issues and thoughts of women of a certain age, because we're both women in our 50s, and whatever else we damn well please. So I'm really psyched that you're here talking about innovation and creativity from the introvert's perspective on this show.
Thank you.
So let's first of all, I'm ridiculously glad that you're here. We've got a lot to talk about, but it's really funny for me to say that, Valerie sings with the Philosopher's Tones, and you're not the first tone who's been on the show. Petra Mayer was on the show last year, and you and I have known each other for years, and we met when you auditioned, and I thought, I need her. But I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you're more of a pianist than you are a singer. So let's talk about that. You describe yourself as a musician with a desk gig. What does that mean?
I always consider myself a musician before anything else, and I've had one foot in music, playing the piano, doing anything music theater, and the other foot in a job that'll pay the bills.
Mm, got it.
So I kind of look at it that way. So I am an administrative professional, and that's not what I would say I was first.
Okay. Now, are you a pianist first or are you a singer first?
I'm definitely a pianist first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's cool. It's just like for me, no matter what instrument I play, even though I started playing violin when I was 5, I'm a singer first. And
Mm.
the musical instruments sort of come in after. And I'm dying to delve into what drew you to the piano. So was it always the piano? Did you play something else first? How did your interest in music and piano begin?
I do not. I, by all accounts, I don't think I showed any interest as a young child that I'm aware of. Nobody has ever said to me, "Oh, you went up to mom's piano and started banging on it." I've never had one of those stories,
Mhm.
where she just naturally was drawn to the piano and she started picking. No, no, that was not me. My mom played the piano a little bit. My dad played the trumpet. They wanted me to play the piano, and I think that's just how it started. And when I was 5, they took me to the Yamaha School of Music in Marlton, New Jersey, which is now, I think it's called the South Jersey School of Music. And it was, a Yamaha sponsored store that had lessons, and you could buy the books. I don't even remember if pianos were in there. I don't think so. But I took a group class, and I was one of the top students there. After class, I would say to my mom, "Oh, I want to play this song," and everybody was kind of standing around. It's like, she's 5. How is she playing this song so well? So it wasn't Suzuki. It was definitely reading music right off the bat, and somehow I had an aptitude for it.
It's interesting. You had an aptitude for it. For reading music was a challenge for me, and I remember very clearly the day that I figured out that this finger on the violin was going to bring out this note on the staff.
Hmm.
And as a singer, though, you sort of have to figure out where the pitch is going to be relative to what you're looking at. When you did that, when you went, "Oh, this comes easily to me," what was going if you could remember that far back, how did you approach all of that? Was it just, "Oh, this is natural and it's fun," or did you analyze anything, or was it just more of an intuitive way of figuring things out? How did all of that go for you?
I really only remember the fun aspect of it. I mean, I just remember looking at books ahead in the book, uh, which is something that I suggest to my piano students. Do not be afraid to go ahead just to try it out for yourself. And I would just go ahead in each book and try to play the song. I don't even think it was I don't feel like it was a conscious thing. I only remember a few things from when I was a kid. So I do remember specifically sitting there and saying, "Oh, this next song is called blah blah blah. Let me try it," and just trying it. So I think some people just kind of noticed that I was picking it up and got a little excited about it. I don't even know if I was a prodigy. Uh, those words were never used either. So it was just fun for me for a while.
I love that. I love that. I mean, my history with playing the violin is very different. I was required to play the violin. It was not a there was
Mm.
nothing fun about it to me. And in fact, I remember not I would never have chosen the violin for myself. However, I do also remember thinking about the sort of the math of it, that everything is broken down. You can break down a quarter note is, one note to a beat, a whole note is four beats, et cetera, et cetera. Do you consider yourself someone who's looks at music in that way, as in, let's break it down mathematically, or is it more you're in the flow and you don't even have to tap your foot to the rhythm?
I'm more in the flow. Um, Math, not so good.
Aha.
um, you know, I can kind of do it now. I mean, complicated things. Algebra, geometry was not my strong suit. But in speaking with you about it, I realized I remember my father used to play his records, his jazz records, um, and I would sit on his knee and he would bounce his knee in time to the rhythm.
Mm.
So I mean, it would be kind of cool to say, "Oh, that's where I get my rhythm from." But you know, and so maybe somewhere I kind of felt it. I kind of feel it now. Of course, you have to practice to keep it up, but my rhythm is pretty good.
Well, I think your rhythm is amazing, especially since you are more than able to keep up with what rhythmic nonsense I make when we perform. Uh, if you're listening to this, you have to understand that Valerie and I are in the Tones Together. We do the Two Women of a Certain Age podcast together, and every once in a while, we also play music together, just the two of us,
Hmm.
me on guitar or fiddle and voice, and Valerie, of course, on the piano, being amazing. And when I play, I'm all over the place rhythmically. I will do things to the speed of the piece in the middle that will make your head spin. And Valerie, you are amazing at not only keeping up with it but staying in the pocket. And it's interesting to me when you're talking about your dad and jazz, the jazz, so much about jazz is being in the pocket, is being
Hmm.
attuned to, intuitively attuned to whoever you're playing with. And so when you're doing this, when you're playing tango, for example, and I'm not going to say that everybody else is rhythmically challenged like I am. I can't say that. But how does that work for you when you're in an orchestra and you're playing something that isn't as regimented, for example, as classical music? How do you make that happen as a musician?
Well, fortunately, I was trained classically, so woohoo for me. So we did, cover all the basics. Once I left Yamaha, I studied with another teacher privately. We finished the books. Then we moved on to John Thompson's Red Book. Anybody who is about my age probably knows the John Thompson Red Book. It's my favorite book. And they kind of got into, like little kid exercises, but they also did snippets of classical pieces.
Uh-huh.
So you had some Handel. Didn't really, I don't remember Bach, but I remember, little Beethoven and little Mozart, that kind of easy, I mean, not complicated
Mhm.
stuff by them. And so they would just kind of slip it in because John Thompson, I don't know when that book was copywritten. It must have been in the 30s. And when you look at it, you're like, yeah, this is old. Some things in there you're like, ooh, maybe you should take that out. But
Aha.
basically, the goal for a child at my age, born in 1967, uh, at around that time, was to be a concert pianist. Like, I didn't play Billy Joel, though I would have loved to, or Elton John, which I would have loved to. That wasn't part of the lesson.
Mm.
So kids now, they learn the classics. They learn the classics sometimes, but they also have fun. And when I'm teaching, I definitely like to have that element in there so they have a goal. They learn the technique, then they have some fun. Because when I was growing up, there was no fun.
Ah, I
So
see.
I ended up resenting it. But I think partially because my mom loved classical music. That was great for her. My dad loved jazz. And because of that combination of hearing one or the other while growing up, it just kind of fused in my head. I've been told that I can switch gears easily. So if I'm playing a jazzier piece, I could play it. But if it's time to play a classical, I could play it. Where some people can't do that. It's one or the other. Now I can't improvise, so don't. I'm not gonna lie about that. But I could, kind of play the chords and comp underneath, and play for your wedding reception, cocktail hour, that kind of stuff. Some jazz standard stuff like that. So yeah, I think between those two things, that's what made me able to switch like that.
It's so fascinating. I love that you said that. I wrote a book all about that. Actually, my first fiction book was all about a classical musician
Yes.
whose main goal and main sort of mission was to learn how to improvise because it's something she'd never done. And there's something about the structure of music like that, when it's classical music and it doesn't call for, in fact, you cannot improvise classical music in that way,
Hmm.
that there is that it's almost, even if it's technically difficult and challenging, in some ways it's less challenging because you can sit in the comfort knowing that you are going to do what's written on the page.
Hmm.
Do you feel like that ever? Is that something that is that structure that is a comfort to you somehow? What about that structure is it makes things easier for you?
It does make it easier because it's on the page, and that's why I struggle with jazz improvisation. Uh, Now, when I was growing up, everything just seemed magical. Miles Davis just picked notes out of the air, or pianist Bud Powell. My God, how do they do that? I don't know how. Well, it's because they know their scales and they practice,
Sure.
and they were trained classically. It's like the biggest secret of jazz. It's like, yeah, no, they don't just come out of the womb playing this stuff. They really study scales, not just the major scales or the minor scales, but all of the scales, the modes. You have to be able to get around on your instrument. So that was something that I was never really told. And, as a classical player, I only went so far with the scales um, as a kid. Um, but I lost track of my answer.
Well, we were talking about how in some ways the structure of classical music is it can be
Oh yeah.
more comfortable even if it's technically more difficult.
Yeah, definitely there is a huge comfort level when I'm playing the classical music because it's all there. We've heard it a million times. Some people find that boring. I don't. Um for whatever reason. Uh and I know that now more classical musicians are, we've learned that they kind of improvise back in those days too, but for some reason they just kind of washed that out, and so everybody had to play the exact same thing. All the cadences had to be the exact same thing, you know. But I feel more comfortable when I'm playing classical music because it's very expected, and I know exactly what to do with it, and there's no surprises really.
That's interesting. I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, "Give me the surprises, take me somewhere I've never been before." Even though I too love classical music, I stopped playing classical music when I was 14, and I
Mm,
stopped singing classical music in college, really. Now when I sing classical music when someone books me to, "We need someone to sing Italian arias at this Italian embassy
right.
thing. Do you wanna go?" "Sure, I'll go." But what's really interesting is that I improvise arias too, don't tell anybody.
Oh, right.
Uh, a
I
and
think it's okay.
yeah, and the thing is if I'm solo, nobody cares because I'm just by myself, and the only person who has to keep up with me is me, and that's something else that I wanna talk to you about, this idea of being a solo musician versus being in a group, especially you, because you're rather famously introverted. So, talk to me a little bit about how that works. You perform solo when you get booked to do that.
Hmm.
You perform in groups like the Tones and with the Tango Orchestra and places like that. And yet, you're a big time introvert. Can you talk a little bit about how you work that, how you reconcile being an introvert and being someone who's a performer? And if you don't mind, I'd love it if you would sort of identify what introversion means to you first?
Okay. Introversion for me is getting your energy not around other people. I mean, there's probably a medical or psychological term for it that I've never bothered to memorize, but basically, my inner world is richer than going out in the world to talk, get energy from others. So, I was always known as the daydreamer. I was always, in class kind of not paying attention.
Mhm.
Because my brain, that's just the way my brain works. I'm in class, you get graded for participation. My grades for participation were always low.
Mm.
I'm not going to be the one that's going to raise my hand. And that's kind of stands now, although, as an adult, I am aware uh, that I need to be prepared to ask a question.
Mhm.
Whereas when I was a kid, that was not, I didn't have the need to do that. So I get more energy when I'm home. I'm more motivated. I do more things. If I'm living by myself, my house is a lot cleaner because it's like my energy is being zapped by somebody else. And I have a partner, and because of this pandemic, he does not zap my energy now.
Hmm.
But that's because I'm never out in the world. So, you walk out the door, you have to deal with your commute, you have to deal with people on the metro, and by the time you're at work, you're exhausted.
Mm.
Like I'm already done by the time I get to the office.
Yikes.
Yeah. So then you're at the office and people coming in, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And then, I'm gonna lay on the floor by the time that's over.
Oh my.
So, trying to do the work and trying to concentrate and being in the office and having people coming by talking to you. I mean, I don't mind talking, of course. I'm not saying nobody talk to me. I'm just saying it takes my energy a
Mhm.
lot.
Mhm.
And the people I work with are pretty great, so it's fine. But by the time I come home, I'm really grumpy after commuting in, working all day, commuting home, and I just want to be in a closet somewhere sleeping.
I see.
So then, I get a little snappish with the partner. Sorry, but but that's just the way it goes.
Right.
So at the time, I would have to like book a hotel for myself for like a night just for the silence. And I haven't had to do that now because I'm not getting my energy sucked away. Um, we're fine. I thought it was going to be an interesting experience, and I know a lot of people during this pandemic were kind of, relationships were tested,
Right.
but ours was fine because I didn't have to deal with anybody else. But
Mm.
as a musician, when I play solo, of course, it's kind of like in being in a daydream state. I don't have to communicate. I just play. Um, in a group, interestingly, and even if I don't know the musicians, I get energy from them.
Hmm.
It's like a whole different thing for me. It's like I'm in this group, and it's usually people I already know. I mean, with the bands, of course, it's people I already know. When I do music direction and I get my pit, it's usually all people I already know. Interestingly, 9 out of 10 of them are also introverts.
Hmm.
I don't know if that happened on purpose or or it's just weird because it's during a break. Nobody's talking. Nobody's mad. They're just don't feel the need to talk. I have a band of introverts. It's the most hilarious thing. It's like I
Wow.
picked the right people.
That's so funny.
But I do the most talking because of course I have to give direction. But
Right.
uh and when I'm doing that, I still don't lose energy for some reason with the band. Now, when I'm working with the actors, my energy is drained.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just a different way of communicating. I mean, a lot of the actors that I work with, like are teenagers. So I can't talk to them like musicians. I have to talk to them like, okay, this is what I want to get out of you. And it's mainly teaching the notes and having to reteach the notes and having to settle down the group and then reteaching the notes. And then somebody asked me a question about what we've already done. So I have to re-teach the note. Uh, People are talking in the back. It's just that's draining for me. So it depends. So that the answer is it depends. If I'm working with musicians, I'm not drained ever. It's just kind of weird, even if I don't know them. I think it's because I'm secure in what I'm doing at the piano. I'm not always secure at what I'm doing as a music director, but it's still okay because they know what I'm talking about, even if I talk in some shorthand. But after the show is over, I go back, I come home and then I have to kind of relax because I still get the energy from the audience and the actors, pulling from me. So, it's just kind of interesting to experience.
That's so interesting to me. It really is because first of all, there's so many things you said that I'm like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. Because this notion of you said the energy from the actors and the audience pulling from you, and I'm like, this is what I know makes me an extrovert is that I that energy adds to my experience. It does not take away from it. It doesn't sap my energy. It adds to my energy. The energy of being in front of an audience or working with other people in that way. So there's a really interesting distinction there between an introvert and an extrovert. And there's something else that you mentioned that I really want to get your thoughts on. You said when you're playing, you're just playing. There's no communication. You're just playing. Uh, Whereas for me, everything I do on stage is in an effort to communicate, to engage the audience somehow.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about when you said that, what did you mean by that? That you're just playing? Is it that you're lost in the dream of the music and you're not thinking about what's outside you? Is that an introverted characteristic, maybe, or what does that mean when you're saying I'm just playing and that's it?
Uh, I think it is kind of in the dream of the music. Uh, when I do play, usually if I'm hired to play for like your reception or a dinner party or a cocktail hour, um, I'm playing songs that I like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's songs everybody knows, but there are songs that I really never want to play again because I beat them to death, 20 years ago. So, at one point, as I was playing one of those songs, I was thinking, oh my God, I'm so sick of this song. And it just came to me, you never have to play this again unless I guess someone hires you to play it. So, if they want to sing it or they just want to hear it, and then you play it then. But yeah, I kind of go into it's kind of like a dream state a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm communicating through the music to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, it isn't me. I feel like it isn't me directly doing it. I'm using the piano as the instrument to reach the people.
Instrument being used in two ways here, the instrument as in the physical instrument, but
Right.
also as sort of the conduit, it sounds like,
Right.
of
Yes.
of that energy.
Hmm.
So when you do that, you said something else that kind of made me go, huh. As a pianist, that it sounds like you're very confident in your ability to make that communication happen, to reach the audience.
Hmm.
You said that you're not always confident as a music director. Can you talk a little bit about what role confidence plays in your ability to perform and also in your ability and sometimes perhaps your challenges as a music director?
Um, well, there, as a pianist, uh, I haven't studied classical since high school, really, or college, briefly. And it's more of I am aware that I can play the piano very well. Like if I have any ego on any topic, it's on the piano.
Mm-hmm.
Not for anything else. I'm kind of like, oh, whatever, I guess. But when it comes to the piano, I know I'm okay. Even if I find somebody who may probably plays better than me, that's fine. That's them. I don't. I used to when I was younger, kind of compare myself to other pianists, but I quit doing that.
Mm-hmm.
No point. Um, as a music director, there's additional knowledge that you have to throw into it that to be able to communicate. And with musicians, talking to them is just easier to get my point across without going into the theory of something. They know what I mean. They know what I mean, even if I don't use musical terms. As a music director, I have to communicate to the actors what I want from them, and they may not actually be musicians.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to kind of edit or um uh what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to make it
Modify.
modify or, customize what I'm saying. And each kid or person, actor, adult, whatever, they have different levels of knowledge of music. They may have none, they may not sight read at all or be able to read music. So I have to be able to get the same point across on many different levels. Um, and it's more of a challenge for me. So it is, I don't have the same level of confidence. People will say to me, "Oh yeah, you're a really good music director." I'm like, "Really? Am I? I don't know." I'm just trying to get the show on the stage, That's basically what I'm doing. And I've been spending a little bit of time trying to see if it's just me or is that the job of the music director is a typical job. And just in recent weeks, I was in this program where we talked to uh, Broadway music directors, and it was a group called it's called Muse, and Musicians United for Social Equity. It's basically for people of color. They're committed to creating diversity within the music departments of the theater industry. And I'm reading directly from the website, not that good, by providing access, internships, mentorships, and support to historically marginalized people of color. So they're just basically trying to get more people of color on in positions of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So they put together this mentorship program, and it was called the Piano Intensive or the Piano Experience. And if you're an experienced pianist and you see that the piano is a major part of your musical life, then you should apply to be in this workshop. And it was 3 weeks. It was a lot of webinars, talking to music directors, like for Next to Normal, and composers in Hamilton and Mean Girls and Motown, and we I could tell that we were all trying to keep our fangirling tone down because it was kind of really I'm gonna talk to Tom Kit. Oh, okay. I have to play for him. Oh no. So I just tried to be cool. I tried to pick songs that he didn't write. So then
Right.
I didn't have that added level.
Right.
I auditioned actually with a piece of his, and when I realized what I had done, I was not happy, but it was fine.
Yeah, you got in,
Yeah,
right?
right, I
So,
got in, so it was okay. But just from their experiences and what they were telling us, it's hard. Being a music director is not easy.
for sure.
All of the things that I've been experiencing in the 20 plus years of music directing, from going just from the rehearsal pianist to seeing a music director not pay attention during rehearsals. So during the actual show, she kept missing cues.
Mm.
So I'm like, is she going to take the cue? I guess I'm playing. So I'd start playing, and then everybody would chime in. I could tell, the whole orchestra is staring at her. I'm like, literally. I mean, I guess I should have just did nothing, but the show would have suffered. So, and I said to myself, oh, I could do that. I can't stick conduct, but I could conduct from the piano, probably, I guess. All I have to do is lead them in. Ha 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 ha. I was young.
And a little naive, I think.
Oh, big time. Because even now, at this age, I'm like, man, this is rough. I mean, I didn't take into account everything. I mean, she wasn't the vocal director. She just came in to conduct the pits.
Hmm.
So, she had to come to the last few rehearsals and take notes and blah, blah, blah. And there was no cell phones at that time. So I don't even know what she was doing. Like, I don't even remember the woman's name, but it was 100 years ago. Um, and she was not paying attention, so she missed all the cues. I just thought it was weird. Uh, because I'm coming in like a classical musician. Okay, I got to pay attention to every single detail. What's
Right.
happening on stage? What's what? So, and plus, I also knew the show. So the one time that I was hired just as the conductor of the band, the pit orchestra on piano, uh, I remembered that experience. And I said to myself, okay, we're going to go in. They're going to have I forget the name of it, but it's the one rehearsal where all of the production staff shows up. So the lighting people know how to light certain scenes, and the sound people get an idea of what they're getting, and the set, you know, I forget what it's called. There's a term for it, but anyway.
I know it
So
as
I,
tech rehearsal.
yeah, no, it's the one where we've been rehearsing for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and then the production staff comes in to watch a run of the show, like
Mm.
without set or anything.
Ah, okay.
The designer run, that's what we call it.
Mm, okay.
So, the stage manager's there, everybody's there. Usually everybody's not there. Just the music director, the director, maybe the stage manager. And so I went to that and I was taking notes because I had listened to the album. It was Jekyll and Hyde. I listened to the recording a million times. And then I came into the designer rehearsal, and basically I wasn't even watching. I was listening, reading the score, making marks, and then I played 4 or 5 rehearsals before they went into tech week, before we even had the band.
Uh-huh.
And I played just so I could get a feel for the show. And then we had tech week, and it was still a lot of work, having not been at every single rehearsal for to teach vocal parts. So, but I would prefer to do that over being at all the rehearsals doing the vocal parts. I'd rather split the duties because it's a lot. It's a lot. But that's when I realized how much work it really was. From going to, oh yeah, I could do that, to, oh yeah, this is a lot of work even if I'm not teaching vocals.
It's so interesting how the preparation to lead takes so much processing and so much work, and I think any leader, whether you're leading a sports team or the music director or the leader of a business, whatever, I feel like in order to do it really well, you really have to have not just a vision for the whole project, whatever it is, but
Hmm.
also a kind of an intimate knowledge of what everyone else has to do so that you know when they're doing it and when they're not doing it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like when you're music directing, how much awareness do you have or do you need of everything else that's going on, whether it's actors, whether it's the other musicians, whether it's what's going on stage or the set design or whatever?
Yeah, you have to pay attention to everything. I've done shows where an actor got hurt during a fight sequence, and we had to cut their songs. And because I was in the back and I just had a monitor, I didn't realize until the stage manager runs over, cut this song and cut this song. I was like, what? And, I saw him go down, but I had seen him make this move every night,
Mm-hmm.
but this time he actually kind of hurt himself. So um, I uh, have been in that situation. So you have to communicate to the band what we're cutting. I've been on there when the lights have gone, like the power has gone out. That's fun. And because
Yeah.
I'm on a keyboard, there's, that's the end of me, but my brass performers kept going. It was great. The singers kept going, the brass kept going, and by the time we were finished, everybody in the audience was clapping. It was like, all right, they finished the song, and, in the dark, because they had prepared so much. Uh, you have to pay attention to if somebody's coming late on stage because of a costume change. If there's a design, if there's something on set that goes wrong, you may have to keep vamping, playing those four measures over and over. Um, you have to be really aware of everything that's going on. Everything. If a musician has a problem, which fortunately I haven't really run into anything like that, uh, what are you going to do? How many measures are you going to skip because the singer completely forgot a verse?
Oh,
Which,
yeah.
yeah, when you and I have that issue, it's easy because it's me. If the band is in the middle of they're playing and I'm like, oh, they're on the wrong verse. I'm trying to get their attention while somehow tell them where we are. Oh yeah, that's like my hair's on fire.
Right.
If we're
Sure.
backstage, I could kind of talk loudly, but if I'm in front, I have to somehow mime to them, or I mean, even though sometimes I panicked enough and I just started saying, "We're at R, we're at R, 144." They're like, they all have the look of panic. Where are we? But the drummer usually, he just keeps going. He's hearing what's happening. So even if he's reading the music, he's still, he keeps the beat. So yeah, I mean, we're really aware of everything that goes on, which is why if we're in the back, we have a monitor so we could see. Somebody hasn't come on stage yet. Ugh, keep vamping.
Right. Right. It's funny you mentioned when it happens with you and me. Yes. Why, yes, I have forgotten entire verses. And it's funny because there are times when you and I are performing, I've stopped the song and gone, I have
Yes.
no idea what planet I'm on right now because that's what happens. Sometimes I'm so lost
Yeah.
in the moment of the song that I forget what song I'm singing. And I've
Right.
had it happen that I forget how to the words to my own songs and things like that. Stuff like that happens and I feel like to me if I'm not on Broadway, if I'm not a member of a Broadway musical, if nobody said, Isolde, come sing Evita or something like that,
Right.
then doggone it, I can stop. And it's an authentic experience and stuff happens. And yet when you're in this kind of theater situation, that notion of being a well-oiled machine is something that I think is important. As an introvert, how do you, well, as the introverted leader of the musicians, how do
Hmm.
you maintain that well-oiled machine? Do you have a process? Do you have something, talk back with the musicians? Like what do you do to maintain that connection and communication in the moment when things could go completely haywire at any second?
Um, I put the music and the show before my introversion for some reason. It's not even a thing that I consciously do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I need to get the job done and done well, and everybody has to be on the same page. And that's the most important thing. So when I am, as a matter of fact, my guitarist, this is a good question. My guitarist, Rick, is an introvert. Like if you met him, I've known him for almost 15 years. I've made him maybe heard him speak 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we'll have conversations, but is very he does not just talk to be talking ever, ever. If we're at a show, I probably, I'll say hi, Rick. He'll say hi, Valerie, and that's it. and then the rehearsal's over, the show's over. Okay, good night. That's how much I talk to him. I mean, we're friends. I went to his wedding. It was great. But he used to be the drill sergeant in the service. I think he was
Mm-hmm.
in the army.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were at the wedding and he did this big speech, and I joked with him, I think that's the most I've ever heard you say in one sitting. And he laughed. And he said, "Yeah, when I was a sergeant, it was a different story."
Right.
So I feel like the job overrides the introversion. So for me, yeah, I'm very, what do you do? I'm not mean about it, but I'll look at you like, huh? You know,
No, I don't
uh,
see you as mean. No.
right, right. But somebody like I don't even think that I'm any way except trying to get the job done. But my partner told me that my drummer Jim said to him, uh, "Yeah, she's tough," because I'll be getting angry in the moment because it's like, what is happening?
Right.
Or I'm trying to get this tempo up, or and the people behind me really probably can't see it, but I'm just giving the look like, what that, you know, we
Right.
gotta pull it. I've even started yelling during the show if we're backstage because it's going too slow. It's a
Mm-hmm.
dirge. What's happening?
Right. Right.
Um, so all of my introversion goes out the window when I have music director. I am definitely in charge. Not so, when I'm at the vocal rehearsals, I'm kind of like, you know, I have to do this. I'm not very comfortable with the vocal rehearsals because it's a lot of plunking notes and trying to get people to pay attention and then sing it. And then you have to hear it. And then I'm playing too loud, so I can't even hear them. Are they harmonizing? So then I play too soft. Then they get scared and then they start singing quieter, So it's always a struggle with that. With the
Mm-hmm.
music, with the musicians, I'm a lot more confident with them. It's like, yeah, we have this relationship.
Right.
Musical is, once we're in here, we're all in a very heavy relationship, and it has to work.
Yeah, it's intense and it's intimate.
Yes.
It really. I remember. It's funny thinking about this and hearing you talk about you people skipping things. I was doing in high school down in the valley with the great Andrew Lippa. I was Jenny Parsons. He was Brack Weaver. So we were the two leads, and it's an operetta. So you're singing and speaking to the music accompaniment. If you're listening to this and you don't know what an operetta is,
Mm.
and in the middle of one of our very passionate scenes, he skipped 2 pages of dialogue. We were
Oh
supposed to have
God.
2 pages of dialogue over the music, and then we were supposed to sing our big duet. And uh, I knew the show backwards and forwards, and he skipped the 2 pages of dialogue. He was basically at the sentence where we were going to start singing. And I had to sort of, on the fly in front of the audience, double back and redirect the conversation so that we could redo those 2 pages of dialogue and
Oof.
then be ready to sing. And so in that moment, I felt like I was the leader of the whole darn thing, even though
Right.
my hair, like you said, my hair was on fire. And it was this very interesting thing. I was 15 years old. What did I know? But at the same time, I felt like I know that where he is wrong, and his eyes got really big, and he's looking at me like I don't know what I just did.
Yeah.
And so it was this real moment of I can do this. And I stepped into it because I had no choice, but also because I had a certain amount of confidence because I knew the show so well. And you
Hmm.
mentioned something about women in leadership roles that you've gotten involved with women having greater leadership roles. I felt very much like the lead, like I said, like the leader of the show in that moment. Even though my choir director, Miss Powell, was the person playing for the show, it felt like no, this was 11th grade, so this would have been Mr. Wolf. Yeah, so it was a man, was the music director, Mr. Larry Wolf, great teacher also. But in that moment, a 15-year-old girl was the leader of the entire thing. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are with this notion of women leading in theater. And you said that you've gotten involved with something called Maestra, which I love the
Hmm.
name,
Hmm.
about promoting women in leadership roles in the theater. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what Maestra is and what role you have in promoting women in leadership roles in musical theater and theater.
Yeah, Maestra is this fantastic organization in New York. I'm going to say it started, I'm going to say 4 years ago, and I think it may have been three. But, pandemic time has kind of blurred. I'm not even sure. But it's a organization that provides support, visibility, and community to the women who make music in the musical theater industry.
Mm-hmm.
So just like Muse, it's people of color. Um, so, you know, however you identify as a person of color, this is strictly for those who identify as women.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's started by Georgia Stitt and Mary Mitchell Campbell, who are movers and shakers and on
Mm-hmm.
Broadway, composers, music directors, music supervisors. And I don't even remember how I found out about it, but all I knew was I had to be there for the first meet. And it was kind of well, we don't really know what we're doing yet. It's going to be something for women in this community. And so we kind of want to meet with people and see what they have to say. And they had one on like a Tuesday during it was during the work week. And I was like, crap, I can't go to that. I'm working, I have
Right.
that desk gig. So I sent an email to Georgia and was like, are you going to have one on the weekend? And she said, yeah, we got a huge response.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we're doing one on a Saturday and I'll let you know. And I came to this weekend, it had been a while since I've been in New York. I just stayed overnight, brought my suitcase to the all day meeting. Um, and it was amazing to meet, first of all, women that I didn't really know. Uh, like their work, but you don't know them. You've heard what they've done, and you're like, oh, she's the one who did that. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Right.
Uh, but basically, they're trying to get more women. Also, like Muse, getting more people of color. They're trying to get more women and POC women in positions of leadership. So to be the music director, be the music supervisor, composers get more of their work on stage or get staged. Um, and just basically try to get the next generation of women who are musicians who are interested in theater in the room, making the decisions, being in charge, getting a job. I mean, even if you don't want to be in charge, at least, hey, I could be the drummer for this show.
Right.
So getting to sub, and they have been extremely, like both organizations, it's just amazing. With my strange relationship with theater, I have kind of, it's like it's opened all these opportunities, and you realize one, you're not by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Two, yeah, it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Three, I have a lot of work to do. I have to go back to my theory and start working on my scales and start one of the weaknesses that I have as a classical musician was not transposing music. I should be able to transpose any song anytime. So I mean, should it would be in my best interest to learn how to do that.
Okay.
So you get the book of the show, you practice all of the songs because if you're an audition pianist, somebody might come in with a weird piece. Hey, you may have practiced that. Oh, they're singing it in a different key. Oh, I know how to transpose. So they're giving us all these tools to make us better musicians and music directors. So we get the opportunities. So we could say, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. And I'm a woman and I kick ass. Here I am. You know, hire me. So that's basically what this uh, organization is. And I'm on a couple of committees. And it was more for networking than anything. But they're all so cool and open and generous with their time and their information. It's just been a really good community to get involved in, and I'm trying to pull some of my area people in because it's New York. Before the pandemic, everything was in New York. But
Hmm.
now the classes are online, the meetings are online, all of our networking things are online. So we have people from Ireland, California, Mexico, you know, we're all over the world. So it's not just New York. It's really, pandemic was bad, but I'm going to say at least 10 things that came out of it that were really good. And one of the things was this.
That sounds amazing, and now I want to join.
Yeah.
It is interesting to me thinking about this notion of so many. This is going to sound weird, and I know it's a discussion that has been had before, but the vast majority of the people who write for theater and all of that are men, and
Hmm.
partially it's because traditionally, historically, women had all these responsibilities that had to do with maintaining the home. So
Hmm.
that left them very little time to write the musical or the play or the book or the whatever. So it's interesting to me, and you and I have talked about this on our other show, that for me, I am child free by choice, and so anything I don't get done is on me. Right?
Hmm.
I don't have children to take. I know it's going to sound terrible if you're a mom and you're listening to this, but they children take your time, right? So
Yeah.
when you're doing this work and you are networking with these other women who are trying to get leadership possibilities for women, how much of a role does that play? That notion of, we have all these other responsibilities that we are trying to fulfill, as well as wanting to do a life in the theater.
Yeah, and that's why they have the committee for Meister Moms.
There we go.
Yeah, so there is actually a group within the group. Moms, I mean, obviously there have to be mothers that are, doing all of this. And if you go to the website, there's even a picture of somebody practicing with her kid on her lap.
Wow.
I've seen, there was another member who sent in a picture of them with a baby in the little snuggly thing, the carrying thing. She's like
Mm-hmm.
conducting and the little baby's right there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, they talk about, yeah, I also have no children, so I'm not in that group, but they have a very strong group, and they're doing great things for them. They're, as far as I can tell, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
on not on that committee,
Right.
so I am not intimately knowledgeable as to what they're doing, but they're getting a lot of support.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, because to me, that's one of those things that just has always been it's sort of stuck in my craw that so much of this is women were supposed to be keeping house and having
Hmm.
children, da da da, da, and the men were working outside the home, but then afterwards they were free. They could do
Right.
whatever they wanted, so they could write the great American novel or the play or the musical or the whatever, or be part of a theater show. And that's one of the things that I actually wanted to talk to you about. I mean, in addition to being a musician and a music director, you also have a day job. You're an admin professional,
Hmm.
and so you have to balance those two. The Because theater rehearsals aren't just you rehearse twice and you're ready to go.
Mm.
Theater rehearsals are 5 nights a week and
Hmm.
often on weekends and da 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 da. So how do you balance those as someone who has the day job as well as who has this dream and this goal of being more intimately involved in the music part of your life? How do you balance them logistically and emotionally, spiritually? I don't know what it takes to be able to balance those nowadays.
I don't.
Ah, okay.
That's the easy answer.
And scene. Got it.
Right. I wish I could tell you. It's been a struggle my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
There were times when before the healthcare plan, the Obamacare, before that,
Mm-hmm.
it was okay. I'm doing music, and I would do it for 2 years. I'm worried. I need a job, so I have insurance. And I would go 2 years. My soul has been sucked away. It's time to go back to music. I
Right.
would do it every 2 or 3 years. I would switch back and forth until I'm going to say the last 20 years has been me trying to do both at the same time. Because,
Right.
you're getting older. I did quit at one point, maybe 10 years ago. And it was a little experiment. And it was before we had the Healthcare Act. So it was a little hairy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how people were doing it, which is why I went back to the office. So,
Right.
um, at the time, any of the work that I was doing was enough to keep me busy during the day, but I didn't walk away at 5 o'clock with it.
Mm-hmm.
The job I'm in now is like a career making job.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's in this position, somebody who wants to be a career as an administrative professional and move up and do other things, this is the job for that. And so I realized that on my first day, it has taken a lot of my energy. Like in a
Mm-hmm.
good way. It's a good firm and everybody's great. But it's more than just answering the phone and typing up documents. It's and filing.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond, and I've kind of expanded my role. So I have many different levels. So when I'm going to rehearsal and I'm rushing, I'm trying to get rid of the day to go to rehearsal and not be stressed and snippish, which my first show that I did, when I first got the job, I was stressed and snippish the entire time. I felt bad. It was a group that I've worked with many times. It was a lot of people I didn't know. I think they thought that I was being kind of standoffish and why don't you know your stuff? Um, but it was more, I don't know why you don't know your stuff because I'm stressed.
Right.
I
Right.
need you to take this load off of me a little bit and practice and work at it. And, you know, whereas usually I have more patience with trying to teach.
Mm.
So I did not make many friends on that.
Right.
Usually I'm kind of
Right.
friendly with people. Not that anybody actively hated me, but I feel like people kind of were like, okay,
So that's how it's going to be.
right.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, that is not me normally.
You know what's interesting about what you just said, and it is fascinating to me, this notion of sort of turning it off, turning off the job and turning on the music theater person. And yet there is a rigor to knowing your stuff musically. Like, I've never walked into a rehearsal or a show I was doing, anything like that, without knowing my music cold. Like, I will learn it
Hmm.
on my own and hopefully don't learn it wrong, because I've done that too. I have learned, I thought I was doing it right, but I wasn't. But I come from a paradigm, if you will, where if you get into a show or you get into a group or a band and you have a set list or you have whatever, you will know it coming
Hmm.
into the first rehearsal. That's how I was sort of. I had a phenomenal choir director in high school, and she instilled that in us. You will know your stuff before you walk into the first rehearsal cold.
Hmm.
And so that there's a rigor to it, and I feel like that rigor, I don't know if it translates to the day job or if the day job informs the rigor musically, but I feel like there's a relationship there that we can explore as far as knowing your stuff. Like, I understand, and this is going to be me being very cold, I guess. Artists are artists and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, if you're an artist and you are working with other people, you have to know your stuff. Just like
Hmm.
if you're a worker at an organization, you have to live up to your responsibilities. You have to know your stuff. So I'm wondering, with the creative part of you, the music part of you, the music director part of you, how does that inform the admin work? Like, if you take the role that you have as a music director in this group of people all putting on a show, and you translate it or transmogrify it into the role of you as an administrative professional working with this group of people, does that rigor translate? And if so, how? And if it doesn't, what do you think we need to do to make it translate?
Hmm. I think that the organization skill definitely kind of goes back and across both. So I have to be, obviously, as an admin, extremely organized.
Mm-hmm.
There have to be processes and procedures in place. And I try to, and it actually works across with the music direction and being a musician, or a pianist, whatever, both, either. Um, so I think the organization is really, like you say, I'm kind of the same way about going into a rehearsal for something. I have heard the recording a million times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also, though, the person that will tell you once you come into rehearsal, kind of forget the recording. And I know a lot of people still rely on it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's our show. That's their show. This is our show.
Right.
So be aware of the song. So plan ahead and be aware. Or if it's a genre, and I think that's what happened with this one show, it was a disco show. I was astounded at the amount of people who had never heard half of the songs. Now, I
Ah.
grew up in the era,
Right.
you know, and I know there were a lot of young people, but still, at least you would have listened to the recording, so
Right.
then you would kind of have an idea of. So that was hugely frustrating for me. Um, it, yeah, and it's one of those things where I think they kind of work across each other. Like I've been in situations where I've gone for manager roles and they're like, "Oh, well, it may be too much for you." It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Have you ever put together a show?"
Right. There's so many moving pieces, and yet, what's interesting about that? Like, I look at it like the vision is the dream and the mission is the goal.
Hmm.
you know so the vision of what the show's going to be like, that's great, but
Right.
the mission is
Reality.
what are the realities of
Yeah.
the practical things you're going to have to do to prepare and design and do everything that needs to be done to put this thing together. And so it's funny because I keep looking at it like, well, this translates to business, this translates to work that's outside the theater. And I'm going to ask you a strange question. What do you think employers should do with the creatives on their teams? What do they need to do to bring the best out of these of people like you who have these creative yet able to manage portions of their lives that they can bring to their work? How can employers best utilize and also support the people who are so creative who are working for them?
Um, it's funny because we have three people on our team. So, one of my colleagues is in a band, and so she was like, "I was in the studio all weekend." It was like we're all realizing that, we're all trying to do this at the same time. It's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, the pandemic opened the door. We started a podcast at work. And because of my experience in the entertainment industry, even though the podcast experience that I had was with you,
Mm-hmm.
and it had been like for 5 months, um, still, I brought a lot of value to the group. And so now I'm one of the main people that organizes and schedules the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in charge of getting the schedule straight, making sure communications between the people who are the producers is a different group. They do the recording and the editing and the putting together, get them the script, make sure I'm on the calls, I'm the voice at the beginning. And my boss had said, I had no idea that I had this resource. It's like, yeah, I mean, I can answer your phone, or I can,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
So it's like I think when people tell you at the interview, and a lot of people play it down because moonlighting used to be more of a taboo.
Right.
Now it's like everybody.
Everybody's got a
Um,
side hustle.
right. So if I tell you, oh yeah, I'm a musician, then you're gonna have to, as an employer, I think you need to think, oh, she's a musician. Let me get a little more out of that and what it means, because it doesn't just mean I play the piano.
Right.
I'm a music director. I organize all the time. I'm telling people what to do. I'm firing people. I'm hiring people. I'm, getting their stuff straight. I'm making sure we all work together. I mean, it's like being a manager.
Right. It's a very the skill set carries over and sort of
Hmm.
cross pollinates, I think. And I think that there's something to be said for that. And I
Hmm.
wonder what now that you are, let's say, now that you're more involved in the podcast, what other ways do you think they could be making, I know this sounds kind of cold, but what other ways could they be making use of you?
Um, because I have very limited knowledge of the subjects, the firm is um, labor employment firm.
Mm-hmm.
So we deal with the OFCCP and the EEOC and the Department of Labor, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I've been there almost over 3 years, so I know more than I did when I was walking in, but I can't speak I don't feel comfortable being the moderator,
Mm-hmm.
having a discussion. Oh, what do you think about the new executive order? I'm just like, no. Um, and I'm not even really sure, even though now I also am more involved in the social media aspect too. So I'm in charge of the Twitter account and the LinkedIn account. I put together the ads for the podcast. Um, I do the client alert. So I'm kind of moving in another direction, which is kind of cool. And it's actually, it's funny because I'm like, oh, it's weird. I'm on Twitter and I'm actually working.
Ah,
It feels like I'm not working,
right. But at the
but I
same
am.
time, it's so much become this kind of creative work has become so much a part of business.
Hmm.
Creating the ads and the sound bites and the whatever, and it's fascinating to me how much
Yeah.
we as creatives can be useful. And I get that all the time when I'm working with my own clients. Oh, I didn't know this was even possible. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a one-stop shop. I can do your video editing, I can
Yeah.
do your voiceover, I can compose the score underneath, and I can present you with an amazing ad or video within a few hours. So as creatives, we can be incredibly useful
Hmm.
in business if the people who are running the businesses make are aware of that and make use of it. And I think you've done an amazing job of highlighting just how that is possible. So I'm really grateful to you that you did that, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
so much that you took the time to be here and to talk about this. And I want to have you back because I want to delve even deeper into some of these incredible topics. But I know you have a day to get back to, so I'm not going to keep you that much longer. I did want to ask you if you would to speaking of social media, can you give me so that if somebody's going, I want to know more about that Valerie A. Higgs. How can somebody connect with you on social, Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever you are? What are your handles?
Okay, my handles are VA Higgs, Higgs, and you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. Um, and my Facebook handle is Piano with Valerie, actually. That's my professional page. And yeah, if you
Cool.
want lessons or whatever, yeah, piano with Valerie. That's me.
Or if you're a Broadway producer and you want a
Oh
music director for
yes.
your upcoming show, you know where to go. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. It's and you're amazing. I can say this without fear of contradiction because I know from experience how what an amazing musician you are and how easy it is to work with you. You
Yeah.
make it very simple. You make the incredibly difficult seem very simple. So that's a gift in and of itself. Valerie, I'm so grateful that you took the time to be here. And I have just one question that I ask everybody who
Ah,
comes on the show. And I'd love to have you answer it if you don't mind. It's a
no,
simple
not at all.
question, but it sometimes gives really profound answers. And the question is this: if you had a plane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Be nice.
I like it. I like it. Yes. Mine was be bold, be creative, be kind. So I totally understand what you're saying. Valerie, thank you again so much for being here. I appreciate it
Thank
a
you.
bunch. This
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. This is the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm Isolde Trachtenberg. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new. And if you like what you're hearing, please review it and rate it and let other people know. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, I'd love to meet you on patreon.com/innovative mindset. I also have lots of exclusive goodies to share just with the show's supporters there. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living in your innovative mindset.